Can't find deceased will? Where to look for a lost or missing will? When a loved one dies without a surviving spouse, or their spouse lacks adequate mental capacity, it is important that the children or siblings attain the deceased's last will and testament. Unfortunately, appropriate instructions and directions may not have been provided by the deceased in advance, such that locating their will and other estate planning documentation may not be all that easy. As such, it is incumbent on the surviving family members to locate the deceased's will and associated estate planning documents, such that their estate might be correctly administered and, where necessary, an incompetent spouse is properly provided for, while securing the legal documents in the face of an incompetent surviving spouse. So where exactly should the deceased children or siblings be looking for this elusive last will and testament that would appear to be lost, missing, or misplaced? 1. Start with immediate family members and close friends, as they might be privy to the location of the deceased will, or who might know where the will might be located. 2. In various states and provinces, will depositories have been created that allow for the remittance of wills by the living, such that upon their death there is a specific location for the prospective beneficiaries to make inquiries as to the existence of the deceased's last will and testament. However, not all jurisdictions maintain will depositories, and even where they exist, there is no certainty that the deceased has chosen to use the will depository. Furthermore, will depositories can be slow and tedious, such that concurrently pursuing other avenues in your search is advisable. 3. If the deceased had a safety deposit box within their bank, it is quite common for their will or a copy of their will to be contained in their safety deposit box. This will necessitate your checking with the banks, determining if the deceased had a safety deposit box, and gaining access to the safety deposit box for a specific purpose of administering their estate in accordance with the deceased's will. 4. Similarly, it might be located at the deceased's home or office, secured in a personal safe or locked filing cabinet. It may also be contained in an unlocked drawer or some other location in the deceased's home or office, such that it would be necessary to search all reasonable locations within the deceased's home and office to locate their will. 5. There may also be a digital record of the will retained on the deceased person's computer or in some digital storage location, such as a cloud or an external drive, such that you'll want to search those technology sources. You'll also want to be checking their emails for the will or other estate planning documentation, which will also flow into our next suggestion. 6. If the will has still not been located, it will be necessary to seek out those professionals who were either responsible for drafting the will or might have been provided a copy of the will as part of their job function. As such, you would need to go through all paperwork and emails to identify lawyers, accountants, bankers, investment advisors, etc., in an effort to find the person who prepared their will or would have been provided with their will. 7. If this is unsuccessful, it may be necessary to contact local lawyers as to whether or not they prepared and have a copy of the deceased will. Fortunately, in some jurisdictions, the Law Society has created a system to make that inquiry to the Law Society's lawyers who participate in the system, such as a lost wills list, that will circulate the search inquiry to participating lawyers. As you go through this process, keep a written record of your efforts to track down the deceased will, as you always want to protect yourself in the event that you subsequently proceed without a will and look to administer the deceased person's estate by the applicable intestacy laws and the will somehow shows up at a later date. In those circumstances, even though unlikely, you'll want to have the proof of making a more than reasonable search for the will, including contacting all the key people, such that you are properly justified in your actions should the estate proceed by way of intestacy. Hopefully, we have provided you with some useful thoughts about locating a deceased person's will, if they did in fact have a will. However, there might well be other search areas that we have not covered, or may be specific to the deceased person. Yet we would hope that our suggestions are of benefit, and you will find the lost or missing will should it exist. For legal matters pertaining to wills and estates, including probate and administration, contact our law firm for a confidential initial consultation. Thank you.